Hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my overview of South Park Snow Day. So for those who want to cross it, the way I do these videos, I just have a look at the first 2 hours of a game. That's the Steam refund window. Steam reckons you can make up your mind about whether you like a game or not and you want to refund it in that time, and I kind of agree. I doubt your mind's going to change after 20 hours if you didn't like it for the first 2 hours. So by putting this up, it's a bit of a soft verdict. It gives you an idea of whether a game is, worth your time or not, that it exists. Try and keep it punchy in under 10 minutes and just cover the broad strokes. It also helps me sort of triage what I will cover further and do follow-up reviews on the channel with. So straight out of the gate, this is really cool. I really am enjoying this, and I'm probably going to sink a bunch more hours into it this weekend that I'm having a look at it now. I'm in pre-release at the time of this recording. I wasn't really sure what to make of this game. I really enjoyed the first South Park game, whatever it was, Stick of Truth or Butthole. I can't remember what the name was, but I remember enjoying it. And I polled all my mates that were playing this with me, and they are the same. They played the first one, and for whatever reason, they never played the second one. Now, don't get me wrong, I fully expect that the second game is just as brilliant as the first one, but it must just be something about how it was released and its timing or something like that. For whatever reason, I just happened to miss it. I wasn't sure what to make of this. There's not a lot of fanfare around this game. The digging that I've done is that it is, well, I can actually tell you firsthand, this is very much a sequel in that running series. This is a third game in that series. It's still the boys playing Dungeons and Dragons, LARPing wizard crap inside the South Park universe. And it's very overt in its references to the new kid basically becoming overpowered and kind of fucking everything up in the previous games. That's a core of this game, actually. It's got roguelike mechanics with rules laid out by their rule master. Like, there is a meta story element, which is kind of hilarious, that the fact that kids just make shit up. There's bullshit cards, in fact, that the other team can pull out, like massive overkill upgrades, and you have a voiceover going, bullshit! And, so they've got a lore master, and it's all in place because in the last 2 games, the new kid, who is you, got to such an OP state that he, would time travel and do all sorts of weird shit, right? So I think that's kind of hilarious, but at the same time, all the characters, Cartman and all, is like, I know you're going to break this game as well. And it has got that power ramp that you get from roguelikes, like Risk of Rain 2 in effect. You can kind of get pretty powerful with your builds, which I love in roguelikes. Zero to Hero is great. But before I get away from it, yes, the previous game was very much internally developed, both of them in Ubisoft and published by them. This time around, it's published by THQ Nordic, so totally different set. And by the way, THQ are slapping things out of the park right now. Back-to-back releases, Outcast and Alone in the Dark. I love them, and I really, really like this as well. But looking at the rest of their release schedule, I don't think they're dropping anything anytime soon. For whatever reason, they're just bashing out all these games ahead of the financial quarter, but I don't know, that's speculation. And it's developed by Studio Question, who, I looked them up, they did the Blackout Club, which was very similar to a lot of this game, and I remember enjoying that. That was very much like a 4-player co-op sort of stealthy thing, and I believe you're playing as a bunch of kids. It's a bit Tomorrow When the War Began-esque. Monsters have sort of abducted or taken over the town and your parents, but the idea is that it's 4-player co-op kind of action game, and this is what that is as well. In fact, I was talking to some of the boys that I'm playing this with. It is 4-player co-op, and I was trying to figure out what the closest comparison to this would be, and this might not be the best example, but Back 4 Blood is possibly it. I'd have to go back and play it again. As much as that game was a bit mediocre, broadly speaking, it had a lot of Left 4 Dead elements in it, but then it had kind of upgrades inside of runs thrown in on top of that. So yeah, it's, I guess, reworded another way. It kind of flows a lot like Left 4 Dead, but with roguelike modern elements thrown into the game, which is really cool. I had no idea looking at this. I thought this was going to be some sort of PvP, Plants vs. Zombies 3 sort of garden warfare thing, but it's not, and it's still got the sensibilities of South Park. It's still very much got all that writing and that funny stuff. There is a story going on. Essentially, there's a snow day, which we don't really have in Australia, but they're all got the day off because there's this apocalyptic blizzard killing people in town, but the kids don't care because it just means they don't get to go to school, which is great. But you're trying to figure out, maybe one of the boys cast a level 10 snow spell and all this sort of crap. So it's really, really fun. You're running around co-op, building out your sort of, whether you're going to be like ranged or melee, and you get 2 abilities, and the diversity of the build is actually really, really fun. And the way that you get cards and you want to shuffle and re-roll and try and make a build is tricky, because you essentially have kind of 4 avenues to build, which would be your melee, your ranged, and your 2 abilities that you pick before you go in. And trying to get upgrades that will benefit into a particular build is part of the trick of the re-roll interplay. So you've got rarity systems and level systems, and it's actually really, really fun. All the combat works really well, even though they're sort of one-button-y. Examples would be like you can get the sword and shield kind of melee weapon where you just normal left click is attack, but if you hold it, you hold up your shield. If you hold it long enough, it charges into a shield bash. That might seem like a small thing, but to me, that's kind of very innovative, watching how you can do cool things with one button. Same thing will go with the right click. A lot of them will be like bow and arrow. If you just click, 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 it shoots. If you hold down, it will go into sort of zoom sniper mode as well. So there's a lot of utility from making the most out of your left and right click. And it makes for a actually surprisingly complex game. I don't want to spoil, elements and sort of cameos as what returning characters that maybe haven't been around for a while. So there's a few twists and turns in here. As far as difficulty goes, it's a bit odd. We've been pushing up to hard difficulty, but there is an inconsistency in that kind of the structure of when you go into a fight, and it is, again, I used Left 4 Dead as a touchstone because it's kind of act-based. There seem to be 5 main acts, and they will be a sort of fairly linear run that you go through, but what adds the kind of procedural or varied nature to the run is the sort of bullshit cards that get played at the beginning. So you're like fighting for Cartman's faction, and say you go and verse Kyle's druish elves. Oh my god. And all the jokes are in there that you think will be. It's very cheeky, and I kind of love it. But you get to pick your starting gear and your starting bullshit card, which will be like your superpower. Maybe you get larger, or you can call down friggin' meteors or whatever. But they also pick out bullshit cards as well. And I've had runs where the only card that they really have is like, it makes it more expensive for you to re-roll your cards. So it doesn't really affect the gameplay so much as it affects your upgrade costs. But I've also had other ones where it'll be like there are invisible dudes, and when they go invisible, because they're sort of like thieves that backstab, they make everyone else around them go invisible. And also all melee characters have like 30% more health, and all of a sudden what was a cakewalk with the different settings now suddenly becomes not impossibly hard, but like really hard. And so that's sort of interesting. It's hard to figure out if you're going to absolutely have a bit of a stomp run because of random cards, or if you're going to be fighting uphill and taking 4 times as long to get through just because your team's getting fisted. So I don't know really what to make of that. So I guess I'm a bit critical of that, a bit standoffish. You do unlock a sort of meta upgrade thing, and there's not a huge amount of weapons and abilities, but there's enough. And the combination and interplay, you sort of start falling into archetypes. One of the blokes in my group is sort of leaning harder into being a healer, and then sort of debuff stacking. You've seen this in some games before. Bleed with daggers from the thief sort of weapon set. If you hit a dude more times, fills the circle. I'm using my hands as I want to do. And then it can fill the bleed buff. And there's a lot of them, you can fart on dudes. There's plenty of fart attacks and that sort of stuff, and make them vomit. And you can also, set them on fire. Fire is actually really fascinating because there's just sort of like these snow bluffs that you can jump into to put the fire. It just won't go out unless you dive into this deep snow. So there's some really interesting mechanics that you haven't really seen. So it's not just some sort of franchise flip, cop-out South Park thing, which, given the different graphics, the third-person look, I'm getting flashbacks to bloody Nintendo 64. I wasn't sure what to make of this going into it. But this is very much a third in a great series, and it's kind of cool to see it do something different yet again, which both last games did. They kind of went into different genres, and I'm starting to really enjoy it. It makes me go, what's the 4th game that they're going to do? What are they going to do with that? Kind of gives me 11-bit vibes, who are also quite notable for just going wild with lots of different genres all the time. It's good. I like to see different stuff each time around as opposed to just the same thing over and over again. Anyway, glowing praise all round, but it is still early days and I've got a long weekend ahead of me. So stand by. If I put more time in, there's a good chance that I'll put a follow-up review and go a bit deeper on what I've experienced. But so far, very impressed, very much enjoying this. Yeah. Anyway, might just leave it there for the time being. I'll catch you guys on the next one.